let's hear from Ben Johnson on Rome Odunze's leadership before we get to love-hate on the pass catches.
He's a pro. He's a pro. He comes into the building and he looks to get after work. And, I think he's taken to that receiver room. Those guys really all mesh well together. It's the hard work mentality, yet, I know he's had some production come his way that can kind of come in waves, if you will. And he started off hot here. Hopefully that'll continue to go. But I know he's just a guy that's committed to winning right now. And whatever it takes for us as an offense to score points and as a team to win ball games. And so I see him as a leader here on this team.
Ben Johnson, very intense. It kind of frightens me a little bit. But Rome Odunze has been a big beneficiary of Ben Johnson taking over in Chicago. Rome Odunze is fourth among all wide receivers in fantasy points per game, behind only Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Emeka Egbuka. Now he gets a relatively favourable matchup against your Commanders, Matthew.
Last 4 games, they've given up 6 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. 6 touchdowns in 4 games. They also give up the 5th most yards per game on deep passes. Odunze, of course, leads the Bear in deep passes. We talk a lot about Javonte Williams as being one of the biggest, if not the biggest steal of draft day. Rome Odunze is right there. Yeah. He was routinely ranked behind DJ Moore. He was behind DJ Moore in ADP. I had him behind DJ Moore. We thought there might be a breakout coming based on the preseason usage. We talked about it in the preseason on Fanciful Happy Hour. But do we think he'd be a top 4 wide receiver a month into the season? We did not. So Rome Odunze, showing why he was a first-round pick last year. He's got an end zone target in every single game this year. And out of the bye, another week to sort of like, hey, get Ben Johnson's offense. Okay, now we've played some games. We can sort of clean some stuff up. I think you'll see more Colston Loveland and Luther Burden out of the break. I think you'll see some more Kyle Monange. I always get that wrong.
No, you did it right that time.
Yeah, there we go.
Kyle Monange. Well
I think out of the break, the younger players will get more run out of the bye. But it is clear this is a pretty good passing offense, and it goes through Rome Odunze. I'm at wide receiver 6 this week. Fire him up.
Okay, comment on YouTube that's coming through. Suave Man, Rico or Odunze in the flex?
I'm going Odunze there. I'm like just, on the road at Washington. My Commanders 4.5-point favorites. I think the Bears are going to throw. You just get such a massive volume. Again, 6 touchdowns in 4 weeks they've given up to wide receivers. He's gotten an end zone target every week. And there's a chance that Hubbard comes there. There's also a chance, by the way, that the Cowboys, whose offense is so good, there's a chance that Dowdle gets game scripted out of this game. Yep. Because you could see a scenario where the Cowboys offense is just rolling on all cylinders. We've talked about how well Dak is playing. And so the Panthers were able to keep it close last week, obviously, and their comeback win. But, the Panthers defense is no match. They're on the road at Dallas, and I could see Dak just going on the next thing you know, Dowdle's just been sort of game scripted out of it, and they've just got to go pass heavy.
Indeed. All right, Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's not often and may not be the case the rest of the year that the Lions are 2.5-point underdogs in any game. They don't have any cornerbacks at the moment. Think that they're going to have to throw and be in a throw script much more than usual on Sunday Night Football. So you're obviously starting Amon-Ra St. Brown regardless, but I think that he is going to explode on Sunday night. He's the favorite to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns this year. The guys who normally do that are like Randy Moss, Devontae Adams, Justin Jones, like ex-receivers. Amon-Ra is just such a weapon out of the slot and has been largely unguardable in the red zone. Obviously, the passing game just runs through him. Jared Goff has such an incredible rapport with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And even though they run the ball a ton, he still gets his work, and I think they may have to throw more than often. More often than usual against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I am shocked, by the way. I continue to be shocked that I thought this line would move, but the line has moved towards the Chiefs. Yep. The Chiefs are -2.5, and I don't understand what.
I think it's the Detroit defense. It's the secondary is an issue. And also the fact that Mahomes and the Chiefs passing offense, I think, looked as good the past 2 weeks as it has in 2 years. So I think that's a little bit scary.
And they're off the loss, and so now they're back home, and maybe they're motivated a little bit more. Yeah, it's still a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose this, they're 2-4. The Kansas City Chiefs. They might be the best team in football, and they could be 2-4 with a loss here. Yeah. So it'll be. Yeah.
But to your point about Amon-Ra St. Brown, we don't need to talk about him a lot more because everyone that has him is starting him. But he's one of the few players in fantasy football that have both a floor and a ceiling. He's got an incredibly high floor, but he's also a threat to have go 8 for 102 touchdowns any game.
Yeah. Every week he's just going to be 8 for 75 with a very good chance of scoring a touchdown. All right, let's jump to Tetairoa McMillan, a guy who has had trouble scoring touchdowns. Doesn't have any this season so far. But the breakout is coming for T. Mac Matthews, just a matter of time. And this matchup is as good as any against Dallas.
Yeah, I think the breakout could come this week. They've just missed a few times on some touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see a Trey McBride situation this year. I think they're going to start coming, and I think they're going to start coming this week. Remember, Tetairoa McMillan has had at least 8 targets in every single game this season. Why do I bring that up? Because wide receivers that have seen at least 7 targets against the Cowboys are averaging 26 fantasy points per game this year. Every single one of those wide receivers, they got at least 7 targets against the Cowboys, scored at least 15 fantasy points. So Tetairoa McMillan, who has gotten at least 8 targets in every game, he should get 7. He should meet that threshold. They're underdogs. We know that the Cowboys' offense is going to be really good. So, yeah, I think a breakout game, this is why this guy was drafted so high game is coming for Tetairoa McMillan, and I think it's this week. He's my wide receiver 15.
Agree with all that. A couple of weeks ago, it looked like Calvin Ridley might be, honestly, on his way out of the league, the way he was playing. But showed really promising signs of life against the Cardinals. Not just the production, but the target share was heavily up. As you can see, first 4 weeks, 21% target share up to 27% against Arizona. Saw those 10 targets. Goes 5 for 131, 18 fantasy points per game. Looked like this is going to be the Alec Iomana show, which is not sure that many people will buy tickets to. But Calvin Ridley seemed to reestablish himself as the number 1 guy. Now he gets one of the worst secondaries in the NFL in Las Vegas. So I think Calvin Ridley, not fully buying back in yet because it was just 1 game and he had 5 catches. But at the same time, I think you can feel okay starting him as a flex guy.
Yeah, I mean, again, we like the matchup against the Raiders defense. They're a bottom 3 scoring defense overall, so we actually think Cam Ward should have some success here. And I think what's important is, not only was Ridley getting a lot of looks last week, but he was getting them in key moments as the Titans were trying to make that crazy comeback ultimately that they did.
Just looked better as well.
He just looked better. We liked Calvin Ridley in the preseason. We're saying, hey, this guy got a massive target share last year in this same offense, and now with a better quarterback that in theory is going to be more accurate than the guys that were throwing the ball for the Titans last year, that we like Calvin Ridley. And then it was just brutal for the first 4 weeks. But a couple things happened. First off, I think he got healthier, to your point. And more importantly, by the way, the schedule got a lot easier. The Titans played this brutal schedule for the first 4 weeks of the season, played some of the toughest defenses in the NFL, Broncos, etc., and now it eases up, right? Last week, Arizona. This week, Raiders and Las Vegas. And so it gets a little bit easier for the Titans. Tighten up.
Yes. Also gets easier for Tucker Kraft, who gets the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a case to do. Yes,
the Tuck Daddy.
Tuck Daddy, Tuck Wagon, who is, I think, going forward going to be a top 5 tight end in the sport. And he's number 6th in your rankings, Matthew.
Yeah, first off, you had me at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
You know what? One of the problems when you have a player facing the Cincinnati Bengals is figuring out which of the 8 billion bad stats you have at your disposal to use to describe the ineptitude of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Sure.
Here are the 2 that I've chosen for this week. The Bengals have allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends this season. No team has allowed more fantasy points to opposing tight ends than your Cincinnati Bengals. By the way, they're also bottom 5 in the NFL in terms of receptions and receiving yards allowed to the position. So again, if you have a tight end in the sport facing the Cincinnati Bengals, it is an automatic start. He's my tight end 6 on the week. The other thing about the Packers, again, they've had 2 weeks to think about that tie to the Cowboys. Think about the Packers. Literally, when they destroyed my Commanders on Thursday Night Football, and we're all sitting here I think at that point they were the favorites to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. They were the betting favorites. Then they lose to the Browns. They tie the Cowboys, a game that everyone thought was would be an easy win for the Packers and Micah's return. They have to kick a last-second field goal just to even get to the tie. Some questions about, the timekeeping. Wow, no home loving, no home cooking from the timekeeper.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And so now they're 0-1-1 in their last 2 games, and they've had 2 weeks to think about this.
Yep.
Returning home to Lambeau against Joe Flacco, making his start, by the way. We talked about comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco, yesterday, that he was coming to Cincinnati. The news came out after the show yesterday. Joe Flacco making the start this week. He will be the starting quarterback, again, Jay, of your Cincinnati Bengals. So what
Bengals.
could possibly go wrong? Immobile Joe Flacco behind that line against Micah Parsons, who have 2 weeks to prepare, and he's been there for 3 days.
Yeah, good luck, Joe. All right, a man who doesn't need any luck and headlines others receiving votes is Stephon Diggs, who the past 2 weeks, Matthew, Stephon Diggs has been as good as any wide receiver in football.
40% target share over the last 2 weeks. He's the 10th best wide receiver in fantasy football without scoring a touchdown. Those are coming. He's my wide receiver 17 of the week. How about Cortland Sutton, who's been a top 16 wide receiver in every week of the season this year except for one. Now he gets the Jets, who give up more yards per reception to wide receivers than a team in the sport. Devontae Smith has at least 27% target share in 3 of the last 4 games, and the Giants allow the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. There's lots of questions about the Eagles' passing game, but I think some of them get answered tonight against the Giants. And then a couple of tight ends. How about Mason Taylor, who we've talked about this show a lot? He led all tight ends with an 88 utilization score last week. He's just out there quite a bit, 25% target share each of the last 2 weeks. The matchup against Denver doesn't scare me because we figure Surtain is on Garrett Wilson. And finally, Jake Tongas, the Tong Man, the Tongler.
Tong Daddy.
The Tongler, the Tong Daddy. Look, 23% target share last week for Jake. He's actually scored quietly in 3 out of 5 games this year. We don't expect George Kittle back for at least 1 more week. And the Buccaneers in each of the last 2 games have allowed multiple touchdown passes to opposing tight ends. Feels like they're going to get Jennings back this week, but maybe not Pearsall. Yep. Looks like probably another week of Mac Jones. We don't have 100% certainty, but it does seem like there's somewhat of a connection of Tongas and Mac Jones. And certainly we know that the 49ers offense and Kyle Shanahan love to use the tight end, especially in the red zone. So I think you could do worse for a streamer than Jake Tongas, who is my number 15 tight end.
Yeah, we need George Kittle back so we don't have to keep saying the word Tongas. It's very strange. It's a strange
Kind of like
name.
it.
Okay.
Kind of like it.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.